Welcome on to another video. Today we're looking at what if civilization start over. Not what if civilization, but what if China formed an empire. Now, we haven't done a what if something did something video in a while. So yeah, it's maybe my first actually. So let's get straight into this. And China, yeah, they're strong, but in real life they are very, very. Yeah, you could say they're strong in terms of how many troops they have, and how like much oil they have to fuel their crafts and all that. But their rockets, their nuclear rockets, are filled with water, and their bureaucracy is laughable at best. So we'll see them doing some stuff, and the first thing they do is start to bump up their forces. They start to invest more into their military, start to get rid of corruption, and the first thing that actually starts to happen is that other nations around them, like Korea, North Korea that is, will start to aid them. So they gain a new ally, and also their other ally is Russia, who doesn't get say much because they're locked in the Ukraine conflict. But we see that their first victim will be Mongolia. But we do see that when they start their invasion, they do so in a very weird way. They first go over into these regions, trying to secure them for one purpose only: to make a buffer zone between Beijing and the Mongolian forces. With that being successful, they look elsewhere where they have kinda had a bad time. Now they look to over here. They have actually been not pushed back, they have actually been pushing quite a lot. They look down south, small amounts of a few pushes, but they do manage to hold up quite well. And yeah, that's something that happens. But in and around here, Mongolia has been quite successful in invading these regions. Now that's because China kind of wanted them to do that, and the reason was because they were going to first attack them. With a two-pronged attack, they attack both angles of this attack of this group of forces over here. They quickly overwhelmed the forces who tried to defend and managed to hold them off for a while until they were about to encircle all of them. And once they did encircle around 100 or so tanks and a few other things, they took this area, and with that the Mongolian army had to leave that zone. Over here we see that the Mongolian army has done a bit more, but their forces have not been able to defend their own homeland because of the sheer lack of troops and the sheer enormous amount of Chinese troops. Speaking of the Chinese enormous army, we see them doing a large offensive into this region, and also another large offensive into this one. With this one being a bit less successful around some regions that are more defended, like in the deserts, for example. Well, this all the southern regions are deserty, so yeah, but having a home field advantage in training troops, we see that Mongolia will start to train as many troops as it can. Sadly, it will be pushed out of these regions and will start to see losses in the south. With the southern regions starting to fall, they start to evacuate their troops. But the first thing they do try is attack over here, which goes successfully, and they heavily fortify this region. And once Chinese troops try to go over here, the continuous attacks do not do anything, and the Chinese military is put on full display, not being even able to crack that nut. We see that over here they have decided to cut off any attempts at escape for the Mongolian army and the Mongolian people themselves. But we see that the Mongols are quite fast in their cavalry and their forces, As they start conscripting some of their people into the army, women are conscripted as well as some teenagers. Around 16 to 17-year-olds are being conscripted, but they're being conscripted for logistics work and help in terms of keeping the army supplied. And with all of that, we see that slowly but surely many offensives will cause the Mongolian army to slowly fall. And with one large push, the Mongolian capital is neared. And once the Mongolian city is almost surrounded, all Mongolian forces abandon their capital and enter guerrilla warfare. Now this takes about a few months to get rid of, but we see that in the time of a few months, all Mongolian people managed to escape to Kazakhstan, from where they either seek refuge or seek to join the Kazakhstani military. One reason was to get back at China and help Kazakhstan kind of out, because the Kazakhstanis helped them out, Kazakhstanians. But we see that in the last ditch effort to save the nation, Mongolia will bring all of their available forces to the fight. Even though it's futile, they do manage to cause and inflict heavy losses on the Chinese military. And once they are gone, we see that all of this area goes under the lure of well, it just gets annexed. All of Mongolia is annexed, with most of the regions that are annexed being annexed out of two very important things, and that is the first thing is they annex the more capable, more wanted areas like outer Mongolia, which was these areas, and then they took central Mongolia. Inner Mongolia was still theirs at this point. With that, we also see that the Chinese will now set their sights at another nation, that being a nation that they have kinda bad history with, but they will be using their large force of a few million, well, not a few million, but since they up their force, we see that they will start to use their forces for a lot of different things. First, we see that both Laos and Thailand get news that there is a maybe there's a chance of them being invaded, and they ask Vietnam for help in building up forces on the borders over here. Even though Laos's border is small, they do have this kind of bad spot, which they can also do the same thing as the Chinese can to cut off the regions over here, but they are in a disadvantage because they know that the Chinese will just abandon this area, then push in. But we actually see once the Vietnamese kinda send troops over here, China will declare war on them, and the first time we see this war happening, the first event we see in this war is a military invasion over here, where the closest troops to the border is just invaded full. And we see that with their invasion, they have brought in many tanks of very weird build. And that's because a new tank design was built up, which could actually work in rainforest conditions and other conditions like more maritime or anything else. This tank has now been used against the Vietnamese, who have not seen this tank nor know the capabilities of the tank, and the Chinese CCP have decided to finally, for the first time, also start a reformation of the armed forces, in the sense that any bad for people who they don't want in the military will be laid off, but not fully just laid off. They will be compensated for their work that they did in the Mongolian war. Most of the good generals will be heavily in charge of all of this. But we see as the Chinese troops start to near the Vietnamese capital, they start to bypass it from toward in the east, but they get eventually stopped near these areas. While in these regions we see that Chinese troops have taken these areas and are starting to move on Hanoi. Hanoi manages to build up its defenses and begins a counterattack from its regions. Although it's kind of futile, they do manage to push back some of the Chinese forces. But even if they pushed hard enough, they wouldn't be very good at pushing. We see that due to this use of soldiers, they do not recognize the threat that's coming from this island. And once they don't recognize it, free landing forces will start to land their troops on the shores of Vietnam. The first one in the north takes over these two areas. The second one takes over areas in the south in a wide strip of territory. And the third one quickly lands in the southern areas where the other most important city of Vietnam is. We see that millions of soldiers will be put on full work, on a full, will be well used on this campaign. The Chinese troops will manage to cut off southern Vietnam from northern Vietnam. And we quickly see that when they start to move in on these areas, they start to try and push through this city. As they know, going through the city is like going through a gate. If they land over here, they can also do the same in that. So they do, but they land on this peninsula, and it quickly goes well for them, as they quickly use the shores as landing points for more troops, which outnumber, and the troops that are coming in outnumber any Vietnamese troops that are defending. Even though the Chinese take massive casualties and see massive losses, they do manage to finally take the southern Vietnamese city. Over in the north and center regions, we see a lot of naval attacks, causing the Vietnamese population to go into guerrilla warfare, effectively doing their own stuff. We see that in our attempt to cut off any escape routes, both the port areas and the border regions will be taken by China. And once Hanoi starts to fall, they start to use their troops in heavy amounts to take over Hanoi. But a counter attack from a guerrilla group over here starts to gain attraction, and eventually we see two guerrilla groups start to liberate all of northern Vietnam. But it's too late as Hanoi falls, and with this guerrilla group stalling and being pushed back, it has been generally thought that if you stall and fail in the Vietnamese areas, that you should just give up. And that's what these guerrilla groups do. They give up, and we finally see something else happening. In this war, we see around 100,000 of the Vietnamese troops basically got POW'd. They were captured either by surrender or were just captured through a few things. And beginning, the first thing we see is that how large is this? Like 2? It may be 2. We see that the northern Vietnamese areas around these areas will be taken, and the rest will be puppeted by our good old friend, how do I say this, China. And we see that China's expansion has caught the attention of the US, who has started to worry for its naval bases in these regions. With the addition that Vietnam has fallen and all of that going on, we see many regions start to unite. Many nations start to unite to try and stop China's growth. But at this point, they have taken Vietnam and puppeted them, and they have just managed to expand their nation quite south. And they have decided that this time they will attack two nations off the bat, that being, surprisingly, Burma or Myanmar and Laos. With these two nations being attacked for the first time, nobody was expecting for this attack to actually work. Some were skeptical, and anyone else could tell you that it's a stupid idea to attack these nations, and the Chinese forces are dumb for even trying. But unbeknownst to them, the Chinese are actually clever in what they're doing, because they're actually using for this offensive, they're using a large border this time, and for their own good. And by their own good, I mean that they use a large border to invade faster. They use German World War II Blitzkrieg strategies, even though it's kind of fascist in terms of their mindset. They think that using Blitzkrieg is fascist. They use it quite well, and even sponsor some other things in these regions. Well, not sponsored, but they take action by they just fund some rebellion groups in Burma and other areas. We also see that over here in Laos, the Vietnamese puppet does manage to send in some forces, although not too much, but they at least make a decent buffer zone in the south. And we quickly see that once they do that, the Vietnamese occupation troops start to move in to aid them. With Laos seeing the southern areas and more the eastern areas fall, they have started to use defensive strategies and guerrilla warfare. Although they do use guerrilla warfare in abundance, they do not manage to defend everything else, and they start to see massive regions of theirs falling. Eventually, enough is enough, and with the fall of the Laos capital, the Laos people just give up and surrender. With that having happened, we see that in Myanmar, the Chinese troops have already reached quite far into the country. Many regions have also started to see pockets of rebellion, although one pocket over here is doesn't want to do much. But in the southern city, we see a rebellion group of Myanmar has appeared, and the Myanmarese, yeah, probably the Myanmarese people are government, who is a dictatorship, by the way, sees this as a traitor's job, and that traitor's job was done by none other than a few Burmese resistance groups. We have seen that in the real world we actually have currently a civil war going on between Shenxi and other forces and the people of the government, people who are loyal to them, and people who want to fight alongside the government to possibly even gain some prestige or just gain some, something. And we see that due to this, many regions of the Shenxi fighting have started to reach the southern cities and other regions. We quickly see that in these areas we have a large amount of problems going on for the Burmese troops, but the Burmese rebellion does manage to finally, after a long time of not having the capabilities of attacking and defending, they now can start their offensive in these regions. They officially have taken control of the southern regions of the country, with the southern areas over here just given up immediately after being invaded. Over here near the capital, it's harder for them to advance because of the many forces. But once a large amount of troops burst out of the southern coast, we see that these two regions start to push into these areas, eventually managing to push out the Myanmaris in these regions. Even over here, we see that the Chinese actually give over some of the territory they captured to kind of gain favor with this rebellion group to not be attacked. And we'll eventually see that the rebellion group will see that it's better for the Chinese to just take over these areas. And I'm gonna just say the Chinese are about around this time doing a lot of reforms. Communist reforms are still a bit bad at this point in the Chinese nation. But we do see that some of these things that are going on will constitute a large war between the rebels and the government itself. Eventually, defense forces, the forces over here start to rebel against the entire government, and we actually see many of these areas near the capital and inside the capital itself, capital region, just giving up on the leader. We see that due to this, the leader becomes very unpopular amongst his own people, his own cabinet, and we quickly see some of them try to oust him, although he uses his military powers against the people. Although he is eventually pushed out of the capital, flying away on a private jet that he owns, he will promise to take back his homeland, and we eventually see that these areas are finally taken by the rebellion, and we will see the results of this war. With this being the peace treaty, we see that in the south, this puppet manages to take some regions over here, and China takes over northern Laos and central Laos, as well as northern and a bit of central Myanmar or Burma. We also see that the new Burmese government quickly makes an alliance between them and China, seeking to make a great friendship happen. With this, we do see that these areas quickly decide to be assimilated rather than just give up on, well, not give up, but most of the Laotian and Vietnamese areas just accept their fate and kind of just give up on resistance. But some of these areas over here that are of the that are more resistant to occupation start to kind of resist the Chinese occupation and annexation of these regions. But eventually it is futile, as no way is there going to be something like, well, free speech basically in these areas. We also eventually will see a lot will concur around the Cambodian border. Occur, not concur, but we do see that the Cambodians, after putting the military over here, will be surprised by another new thing from China. And China this time does not go after towards the south of Southeast Asia. They will go after none other than Kazakhstan. Why do they want Kazakhstan? Well, they want to take some border regions and reach this lake over here to gain some more territory. Also gain some of that sweet population. And we quickly see that when they declare war, it's generally just a war of annexation. And once they start their war, they quickly send two attack forces. One to take the capital and one to push into the other northern areas. And with the northern areas being outnumbered, the Kazakhstani areas being outnumbered by like a few dozen, we see that this attack goes extremely well. But as we can see, occupation areas start to see very many troops die. and that's because some of these Kazakhstani people are not willing enough and are actually Mongolian to an extent, and they don't really want to be invaded. And we also see that due to the rapid advancements of the Chinese forces towards the capital, forces from here had to pull back and consolidate their forces before the forces over here managed to actually reach the capital in full. They were ordered to hit these regions over here that they didn't yet attack, and once they started to attack these regions, we see many areas start to see very much of a very bad thing going on. But finally, having a lot of success doesn't mean you are successful in every area. And we actually see once they start to push farther and farther, they see fighting to be harder and harder. The more they push, the more fighting there is, and the harder it gets to fight. And we eventually see that their offensive will be stopped when they try a pincer maneuver over here, as well as an attacking position to kind of stop any reinforcements from coming around here. They also try and force the forces in the capital to leave by kind of trying to fake a bypass maneuver, but they are stopped. And even when they try their best, they won't be able to stop the exodus of these troops, who eventually stop their resistance because they have either been captured by the Chinese, who kind of outran them at some point, or they have just given up hope on this war and just gave up their resistance. Now, with all of this happening down in the south, we haven't looked up in the north, and if we look up in the north, we can see where a certain amount of the Chinese troops have been going, and we can see that their forces are doing quite well. But while they were doing that, they got news from the south that both Thailand and Cambodia had declared war on them to try and stop them from doing anything else. Bangladesh did not, but we also see that Bhutan will do the same. Although Bhutan did manage to push into the northern regions over here in a bit of time, they did not manage to push out of them, as the Tibetan areas over here are brutal. Over here we do see that a rescue force, well, not a rescue force, but a large amount of Vietnamese surviving troops will start to push towards the nation over here, the puppets' lands over here, eventually managing to occupy them outright. But when they started to push down south and eventually took these regions, they were stopped around the capital of the puppet, who now, well, doesn't really have a capital, but they plan on making it, where. While they were doing that, the capital had the Vietnamese forces had pushed the rebel forces had pushed into some of the southern Vietnamese puppet areas. But we see that with the help of none other than China, these areas will be kind of stopped. Over here we also see that in a very weird thing happening over here, we see that forces from the few forces that actually managed to escape from Laos and Vietnam actually push into these regions and take them over. Although some do take over some very important territories, it's very weird when they actually push into both Thailandic and not Thailandic, but Burmese and other areas. Although this war was going well for the people over here, we see that they will be surprised by a surprise joining of these forces, who will quickly take the opportunity to jump the Thailandic forces who haven't been paying attention to the south. And with the southern areas quickly falling to the onslaught of troops, and with the capital of Bangkok of Thailand being very much in danger, we see that the occupation forces over here will have to in these areas will have to pull back and give up a lot of territory in the north of Thailand. With Thailand doing something like this, they do decide that they will try and hold as much ground as possible to help the others, the other regions. But we see even in the regions that they actually have taken, they are currently being attacked by reclaiming forces who have come to reclaim their lost regions or lost territories. We quickly see that around this area over here, near the Cambodian capital, Vietnamese forces of the puppet quickly push up into these areas and cut off a lot of the Cambodian forces, eventually destroying them, and even in a stroke of sheer luck, they managed to push quite far into the Cambodian regions over here, eventually managing to take even parts of the capital, but not fully. We see them taking the capital was only the beginning of the offensive down south, and eventually it kinda spiraled into an attack on this region. While they were doing that, they will focusing on a campaign towards the coast, which eventually stopped around the border of Thailand, around the borders of Thailand. And we see that they will quickly send a large amount of forces to attack over here, which will be out of the blue. This attack is out of the blue for the Cambodians, who see the possibility of being encircled. And that's what has happened, as these forces quickly just took their opportunity of taking these lands, and they just encircled all these troops. Once they did so, they started to quickly push in on the Cambodian forces and also started to push outwards, trying to consolidate their push into the Cambodian lands and capital, as well as trying to kind of downsize the defense over here. While they were doing that, the capital of Cambodia started to fall once other forces of different units of China started to arrive, and as soon as other units arrived, Cambodia was done for as their capital fell. Their president refused to leave their country, and till his last breath, he fought against the Chinese, which did help his image and made him a martyr for the Cambodian people. But we quickly see that this resistance that they had going on, trying to push back the little, the large amount of Chinese troops, went badly when they lost these forces over here and eventually capitulated. With Cambodia's capitulation, more Chinese and Vietnamese troops could be reassigned to the more important and very much important attack over here. And with a few advances from the already existing troop battalions, who kind of are already over here, and kind of did some had some wins, had some losses, did well in their attacks around these regions. We quickly see that the Kazakhstani troops and Mongolian troops will be surprised by a weird push through by the few Chinese forces that actually managed to exploit a gap in the lines. And once they did, they started to bulge out of this area, and quickly once they consolidated this and the Mongolians and Kazakhstanis found out that it's harder to attack this region, the Chinese just sent a lot of forces, and eventually with all of this going on and with the Cambodian capitulation happening also around this time that these attacks happened. We see that the Cambodian morale will fall, and when the Cambodian forces are, well, not Cambodian, but the Kazakhstani forces finally see that they are being fully encircled, many will leave the ranks and surrender to China, eventually with a Chinese pushing into the capital. All of Kazakhstan will be occupied, and pretty much Russia also asks for some territories from this area, but it's not given. Over here we see some final actual moves by China managing to retake some territories that they lost either by miracle or not. It is pretty much fault of the true fault that's going on here is that if Bhutan wants a fight, they will get a fight, but the fight is just kind of hard for them to actually carry out because once they pushed into actual Bhutanese mountain ranges and found out that it was harder to attack here than it was to defend, they just stopped attacking and just took the regions that they had and just took them. Over in the south, we see Thailand troops finally giving up on these areas. And even near the north, we see a large amount of troops kind of just give up on the fight due to the massive fall of the Kazakhstanis, causing the fall of some of the Thailandic troops. We quickly see that many regions of here will start to be invaded, and once it was made sure that a double strike by both sides over here, both sides of the Chinese forces would be an actually good idea, forces start to attack over here to create a diversion, while other attacks along the entire area over here will begin to kind of throw off the reaction time of any single Thailandic force. And we quickly see that due to the massive multi-attack strategy that was implemented to kind of attack many regions at once and then allow for one region to fall because of the massive advances over here, we see that the Thailandic people and forces will not be ready for this, and many regions just see unstopped invasions by a few hundred troops of, well, Thailand. And we quickly see with the Thailandic troops actually doing a lot over here, and the Chinese forces actually managing to push the Thai forces pretty much back a lot. We see that with the many attacks going on, Thailand will be overwhelmed and will have to choose one area to defend, and of course that is the capital, which was not a wise choice, as when they also decided to pull back from this region, they were not ready for the complete encirclement of these areas. And with the fall of these regions, we see that in a shocking attack up north, Chinese forces will finally take over these regions and just start pushing into other regions that are very good for them to attack. Basically, regions that they can attack without many losses, and once they start to see a lot of this being all over the borders, we see that they will send out forces to quickly attack and blitz through these areas, with the Chinese forces actually managing to attack a lot, and with these forces over here finally being encircled and not being able to be saved. We see that once the Chinese start to take over the rest of these areas and push into even the capital regions and the heartland regions. All of these Thai forces just give up, not wanting to lose their lives, and with the last of the fighting forces being used to defend the capital, a last-ditch effort to defend the capital begins when a large attack reaches the capital areas. When Bangkok is entered by China, they start to push heavily with their new tanks, and eventually Thailand falls and the war is lost. Well, Bhutan still stands, but at this point they've sent a lot of forces against the people over here, and we quickly see that it just doesn't work, so we'll just go all the way back. This will also be the final event of this video, with the Koreans also being the North Koreans as the... Well, I'm not gonna get rid of North Korea in this thing, but just keep in mind North Korea at this point has lost Kim. Kim died of a diabetes, a case of diabetes. Any North Korean that watches this, who is free of North Korea and not hasn't been, well, brainwashed by North Korea, I thank you for watching this. But quick question: would I be charged for anything I did wrong in this video? For anything, for any simple reason? What would it be? Awesome, guys. And here is our final borders. We will see that in and around these regions, our good old friend China has taken a lot of territory in the east, while our good old friend Russia will take some territory, which I will get to in a bit. Over here in Thailand and Cambodia, we see a lot going on for them. Thailand is no longer an independent country, and any well, how do I say this? Any forces of Cambodia that managed to give up were given the opportunity to become loyal, well, people to the Chinese forces and help communism spread. We'll see that Southeast Asia will be made, with our good old friend over here, that being our friend named, well, Burma, will take all of these areas and will move their capital to Bangkok and rename it to Yangon. Yangon will now be a very different city, with a lot of its areas being built back up due to the war, kind of costing the local people a lot to, well, survive. And with the war kind of finishing in the actual capital, a lot of street fighting and a lot of destruction happened to cause the war to end. And we see that Burma has now taken these areas. China has created a lot of new lands for itself, and we also see that Russia will take some territories away from Kazakhstan. And this was actually agreed upon by Xi Jinping and Russia, who kind of made a deal that Russia would give up a few of its lucrative resources, lucrative. I can't speak. I sound like a Russian, but I'm half Russian actually, so it makes sense. Not biased, by the way. I kind of hate my second country. That's who. Well, I don't hate it. I hate the leaders. I don't hate the people, except for those who justify some stuff. But we quickly see that Russia will take a lot of these areas, changing its borders quite a bit and expanding its influence a lot further into Kazakhstan, and we see that even though Kazakhstan is a puppet of China, it is also its resources are being siphoned by Russia to fuel its Ukraine war. And with this, we see that this video will end with the last event being, these guys turn out to be an ally, not continuously fighting with them. But we see that this will be the end of the video with China declaring the great Chinese nation to now exist. Also, I forgot about Bhutan. Speaking about them, they kind of got a bit of their northern areas kind of taken away. And now they look very weird, but at least China looks a bit better. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. It has been a great video, and I'll see you guys next time. Good day, and see you guys later.